Over the past 4 decades, something happened to the retirement savings of millions of hardworking Americans. Something that was never announced, never explained, and never taught in any classroom, by any bank, or by any government office. American retirees who did everything right, who saved faithfully, sacrificed consistently, and trusted the institutions built to protect their money, lost trillions of dollars in purchasing power. Quietly, legally, without a single warning. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is not speculation. These are documented numbers from the Federal Reserve, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. This is the story of how it happened, and what can still be done about it. By 2024, there were over 57 million Americans aged 65 and older. The majority had spent between 30 and 40 years working, contributing to the economy, raising families, and saving what they could for retirement. They were not wealthy. They were not reckless. They were the kind of Americans who showed up on time, paid their bills, and believed that discipline would eventually be rewarded. They kept their money in savings accounts at major banks. They trusted those institutions the same way they trusted any other part of the system that governed their working lives. They did not know the rules of the game they were playing. They were never told, and for most of them, that decision cost far more than they will ever be told. This is their story, and it is still happening right now. To understand what happened, it is necessary to understand one concept: purchasing power. A dollar does not always buy the same amount. Over time, as the economy grows and prices rise, each dollar buys less than it did before. This process is called inflation. For most of the past 4 decades, inflation has run at between 3 and 4% per year. $100 in 1984 had the same purchasing power as approximately $311 in 2024. The dollar remained the same, but what it could buy had been reduced by roughly 2/3. For a working American, this is manageable because their income grows. For a retired American on a fixed income, inflation is a direct threat to their standard of living. Every year their money sits in an account earning below the inflation rate, they fall further behind. And for 40 years, that is exactly what happened. Between 1984 and 2024, the national average interest rate on a standard savings account was between 0.2 and 1.5% annually. For most of that period, it sat at 0.4%. During that same window, inflation averaged 3.1% per year. The gap between what the bank paid and what inflation took averaged 2.7% annually. A negative real interest rate. After accounting for inflation, depositors were not earning money. They were losing it, slowly, legally, year after year. Consider the numbers. A retiree with $100,000 in a standard savings account in 2014 would have seen it grow to approximately $104,000 by 2024. But to maintain the same purchasing power, it would have needed to grow to $134,000. A gap of $30,000. On money already earned, already saved, already trusted to an institution that never disclosed what was happening. $30,000. Gone, legally. The banks were not passive participants. They were the mechanism. When a retiree deposits money, the bank does not store it in a vault. It lends it out to mortgage borrowers at 6 to 8%, to auto customers at 7 to 10%, to credit card holders at 19 to 29%. The bank collects the margin between what it earns and what it pays depositors. This net interest margin is one of the most consistent profit engines in American finance. In 2023, the 4 largest banks reported combined net interest income of over $180 billion in a single year. That came from the difference between what they paid depositors and what they charged borrowers. The average savings account rate was below 0.5%. The federal funds rate was above 5%. High-yield accounts paid 4 to 5%. The gap was not coincidence. It was a business model. Legal, profitable, undisclosed. Built on millions of retirees who trusted institutions they had banked with for decades. The problem extends beyond savings accounts. For tens of millions, Social Security is their primary income. But Social Security contains its own erosion. Benefits are adjusted annually through a cost of living adjustment. The intention is to keep pace with inflation. In practice, the formula measures inflation as experienced by wage earners, not retirees. Older Americans spend disproportionately more on healthcare and prescriptions. Many economists argue the official adjustment underestimates real senior inflation. Medicare Part B compounds this. The premium automatically deducts from Social Security. In 2014, it was $104. By 2024, it was $174. A 67% increase. So retirees receive a COLA adjustment, then immediately lose part of it to rising Medicare premiums before the money reaches them. In 2023, the 8.7% COLA was absorbed by Medicare premiums, prescriptions, and grocery prices that outpaced official inflation. The scale is massive. Americans over 65 held approximately $17 trillion in 2023. Much sits in low-yield accounts. The cumulative loss in purchasing power is among the largest quiet transfers of wealth in American history. Not through fraud, not through theft, through a legal, documented, never adequately explained system affecting the people most impacted. The retirees were not irresponsible. They were uninformed. By design or neglect, the situation has remedy. 3 alternatives have historically outperformed standard accounts. High-yield savings accounts pay 4 to 5% with identical FDIC protection. Same money, same safety, but 11 times the return. Treasury bills are government-backed, pay 4 to 5%, carry no default risk, and have no fees through treasurydirect.gov. Index funds historically return 9 to 10%, carry moderate risk, and suit funds not needed for 5 years. What happened to retirement savings over 4 decades is not individual failure. These were people who followed rules, saved when difficult, trusted institutions that earned that trust. What was missing was information. The information that inflation erodes purchasing power faster than savings accounts replenish it. That banks earn far more than they pay. That alternatives exist equally safe but dramatically more effective. That information was never withheld through deception. It was simply never provided. Millions made perfectly rational decisions that cost them incalculably. The numbers are available. The alternatives exist. For any retiree still holding savings in a standard account, the decision is now entirely their own. Because the story of American retirement is still being written, and understanding what happened is the first step toward protecting what remains.